If you haven't guessed it by now, this is a very special episode of the Raging Verbalist, and it's fact number 201. And I'm John Paul Mendoza, Dr. Speed Selling, and of course, I'm ready for Halloween. Hopefully, you're ready for Halloween. We're going to get you there today. And with me, as always, is the ever lovely Sandra. Sandra stands in for you and asks the tough, probing questions. We kind of avoid politics for the most part. And all of that, you can check us out on YouTube and also Facebook in the Position to Win book group, the Position to Win book group. Sandra, welcome.
Hello, how are you doing?
Well,
You need like a knife prop or something.
Exactly. Well, here I'll hold up a mouse. You do something bad, now the mouse is a goner. So. All right, so what are we talking about today, as if people couldn't gather from this what we were going to go?
All right, so we're talking about scary stories of selling, part 2. So for Halloween, what stories can you tell that will frighten and enlighten our viewers?
Well, if you do not have scary stories yourself, then you haven't been selling long enough. And from my early days of selling to today, I've gone through some pretty scary stories, and we're going to go through and go in some of these in detail, some of these in highlights, but all of these are true. All of these happen. And for the most part, what I can tell you is that if you get up and you're not a little bit frightened about some of the crazy kooky things that you're going to find in sales, then you're probably not doing it right. All right, so let's get to the first one, and I've got to get some air and oxygen. All right, here we go. What do we have?
All right, so with the economy on shaky ground, can we hear about a lost deal?
So this happened this year. We're doing involved in a commercial appraisal business, and I was talking to a customer or potential customer, and this prospect was telling me all about her property, and we do this. I have a very explicit sales process that I go through, and as we're going through and we're talking about these things, and we're going back and forth, and tell me about your property, and tell me this, and this is a standard sales pitch that works. It has a great closing ratio, and we get to the end, and she goes, "Well, that sounds all very interesting, but here's the reality." Well, before you tell me the reality, tell me the pricing. So I give her the pricing, which is about $4,500, and she goes, "Oh." Now, by the way, we had asked in the pre-calls about pricing, and where she just said, "I'm price sensitive." She goes, "Well, yeah, I have somebody who will do the same thing. No, they really won't, but they're going to do it for $990. So that's like 80% off." So she goes, "So if you can beat that, well, we can talk about it." Well, of course, I'm not going to drop to that price. And I said, "If I gave you that price, what are you going to do with it?" She goes, "Well, I'm going to continue calling appraisers until I get somebody who's less than $990. That is a scary time that we live in, because people are, well, how do I say this directly? They're bombing the shit out of pricing on certain things. Maybe somebody had a car payment they had to make, so they would do it for $990. Though, by the way, that is a money loser if you do it right. So that was a current shaky economy scary story, which is, hey, I'm going to keep calling until I find the cheapest. Don't bother me with value or capability. Give me the cheapest stuff.
And why in general are sales so scary?
Well, today it's even worse than it's ever been, and I've been doing it for a long time. And the reason why it's the worst is that people have what I call instant expert syndrome. And instant expert syndrome is that you go to talk to them about whatever you do, and you start working through, your offering and how you are different and how this is laid out well, and doing all of that. And the instant expert syndrome is, I watched a YouTube video, classic case in point. We were selling to a brother and sister, duo, if you will. And no, they didn't sing. And, the sister had engaged us. She liked what she was hearing. She goes, "Well, but you got to talk to my brother." So we get the brother on the phone, and in like a minute, I know that we've got instant expert syndrome, and what is that, IES? And once they have it, and I don't know if there's a telethon for it or whatever, but the guy literally said to me, "Yeah, I know you're running the business. I know you've been doing this," because I asked him if he'd ever actually purchased what we were selling. Answer was no. And what did he say? Well, I watched the YouTube video and I know blah, 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 blah. He didn't know anything. So that is why sales can be very scary. By the way, if you run into the instant expert syndrome people, you just got to know that you're probably going to have a tough road to hoe, because these people are absolutely convinced that they know what's going on. And well, they don't.
And what is your scary road trip story?
Well, this happens to be in the desert of New Mexico. So we go back in time, the time machine, whirling back in time. So we land in El Paso, Texas, and we pick up the rental car, and we're going to go to a place called Sunspot, New Mexico. It's really a spot. It's really a place called Sunspot, New Mexico. So we're driving and driving and driving, and Sunspot, New Mexico isn't close to anything. In fact, what you do is you go to Alamogordo, and then you go up the mountain. Now, the reason why it's called Sunspot is that it is the National Solar Observatory, and it is where they study the sun. For those of you who need a reference on that, it's the big ball in the sky that comes up approximately in the east and sets in the west, and that's just because the planet's spinning. But anyway, there's this big giant ball, and they're looking at it. So we have this meeting. We've blown the meeting time because we're driving in the middle of nowhere, and we get there to the lab, and the first thing that they tell us is, well, nobody really lives in Sunspot because there's, it's just a observatory. It's a government facility, and everybody takes the shuttle bus down the hill. Well, it's not like we're going to stay overnight and then come back the next day. So I said, well, if some of you will ride down with us, we'll just do the presentation here. So I get some brave souls who say, sure, we'll do that. And there's myself and Murray, and Murray's a cool guy. So we said, okay, we think we can get, 4 people in the car, because this is an old Cutlass Sierra. Now they don't build them anymore. And it has, it's a rental car, and it's got frickin' bench seats. So we know we're going to get 6 people into this car. Well, they decide that, they're going to get 5 of them. So we're going to be 7 of us crammed in this car. So we do the presentation. It goes really well. Eventually they actually bought. I mean, that was the craziest part. And then we take them down the hill, jammed in this old, and we drop everybody off. I mean, this is, hey, have a good one, have a good one, have a good one. And now we're done, and it is black, pitch black out there. It is like October, November. It is desert. It is dark. And now we need to get to Albuquerque. So Murray and I start driving, and what we discover is that we're driving through the desert, and it's like a 2-lane highway. There is nothing. There are no towns. There is nothing. And we're trying to get there. And what we discovered, and I think the statute of limitations is all over, is that Cutlass Sierra, because it had a digital speedometer, and we were doing 111. So we were sustaining 111 miles an hour on a rental car. I do not recommend this. And we're just driving down this road, and we're not seeing anybody. And now we're heading north, and we're going to head west. And we see this headlight coming at us. And Murray goes, God, it's a motorcycle, because it's like one headlight. Well, what it was in that clear desert area was a car hauling ass the other way, like we were hauling ass. Now, we did slow down because, you never want to run into a highway patrol guy. And we finally get to civilization somewhat. And the only place open is a Pizza Hut. And it is not like a great Pizza Hut. So we're sitting there at the Pizza Hut eating our pizza. And in walks the highway patrol guys, and the person behind the counter says, "Well, what's going on, Charlie?" And Charlie goes, "Yeah, there are these guys. There's this car flying across the desert on high speed, and but we've heard rumors of this, and we haven't seen it." And Murray and I kind of look at each other, finish our pizza quickly while they're sitting there eating theirs, and drive like saints up to Albuquerque the rest of the way. So that's my scary story. Lots of potential problems would happen, but I can tell you that that was a pretty scary story. And it was scary because of the fact that, well, we were just hauling ass across the desert. So if you ever want to go to a place in the middle of nowhere, well, I can tell you where that is. More importantly is that if you want to make sure that your business is going to be successful, that you are not going to have the scary story, that on this Halloween is not going to be a horror story, what I would suggest to you is that you do one thing, is that you curl up with a good book. And the best book you can do is my book. Most businesses fail in the first 5 minutes. It just takes them 3 to 5 years to realize it, position to win. And the reality of it is that most people make a mistake in the very first 5 minutes. Absolute fact. I can show you example after example after example, but that's not what we're here to do. We're not here to go find the losers. They're easy to find. There's a big giant stack of them out there. What we want you to be is successful. Now you can get this book in 2 ways. You can get it physical copy, which I was just showing you. You can get that from Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble. You can also get it from the Position to Win book.com, positionwinbook.com, and I will autograph it if you are of that mindset. Also, you can get it from Kindle, Nook, and Apple iBooks. Also, since we're talking about remote and being a little out there in the scary part, check out Remote Work for a Better World exclusively on the Kindle store. And if nothing else, a delicious, wonderful hot beverage can be served in your Raging Verbalist mug. All right, with that, Sandra, what is next? What do we jump into next?
All right. So did you ever discover a body and no one wanted to claim it?
Well, I never had a physical body, but I did have a body show up, which is I sold this big, giant, massive disc subsystem to Hughes Aircraft, and I get a phone call, and they say, John, it's something's wrong. We have it. It's unboxed. And there's something wrong. Now, I'm a little nervous because I just hear that. At the time, these were $118,500. We couldn't build them fast enough. We couldn't get them fast enough. We were on allocation. So I make the trek to Hughes Aircraft, and I walk in. And as I walk in and I'm looking, here it is sitting in isolation on a computer room floor. And I walk up to it, and the side that I walk up to looks perfectly fine. I said, have you guys tried plugging it in? Well, we didn't plug it in yet. I said, okay, what's wrong with it? I go around to the other side, and there is this nice rectangular hole in the side of the case. Now, looks like a little, mini fridge, but it's almost 6 feet tall. And I said, okay, what caused that? Well, so I go over to my briefcase, I pull out a flashlight, and I look inside, and there has been an explosion on the inside, because if you don't know what a hard drive looks like, it has an aluminum casting. Well, this is a big drive because this is a long time ago. And that casing is broken. And also, if you look further, is the platters, which make up the hard drive, those are all fragmented and broken. And I look at it and I say, so you guys don't know how this happened? Well, we don't know what happened. We don't know this. We don't know that. And I look at them and I say, well, I know exactly what that is. You talk about the body. Nobody wants to claim the body, right? We're all in a locked room, but nobody ever did anything. And I said, that is a forklift blade. And somebody drove that forklift blade with a forklift and blew a hole in that thing and then blew up the hard drive. And that's what that is. And everybody kind of looked at each other and it got really quiet. So it's almost like solving one of those mysteries. And they said, well, John, how are you so sure? And I'm like, my father owned a machine shop. I've seen forklifts do some crazy stuff in my life. And that was that. So eventually they did claim the body. Nobody did take responsibility because it was like mysteriously happened. Well, who was on the dock? Well, nobody remembers. Nobody did anything. And away you go. So that was as close as I ever got to finding a body. Also, the people who were, the program manager was waiting for this drive, looks at me and goes, well, we're going to need to get a replacement and fast. And I said, well, first off, it's going to took you months to get the money to get this thing approved. By the way, they were self-insured, so it was on them. He goes, well, let me see what's going to happen. I called my boss, and she was very unsympathetic. Worst boss ever. Won't say her name. Will give you her pejorative, but just, somewhere in the dictionary is a picture of that, person under bad women. And she goes, first off, she goes, how could that be? What, you're making it up, all that other stuff. I mean, why would I make it up? And she goes, well, okay, it's going to probably take a long time. I said, well, find out how fast we can get them. She did nothing. I ended up going over her head, which is probably one of the reasons why she wanted to fire my ass. And I found out that it was going to be a long time. Now, since it was a spook program, so it was a high level, espionage thing, not espionage, but, classified stuff. They ended up getting some strings pulled, and they got it. Well, they gave me an order for another, and by the way, you get commissions both times you sell it. So that forklift operator took that scary body story and converted it into another $118,500. I never saw a purchase requisition and PO issued so quickly for that amount of money in my life. So sometimes you get a very nice treat out of the thing.
And have you ever had mysterious money show up for a deal?
So I'm selling, same company, weirdest thing I ever sold. Yeah, we had a disk subsystem, but we had a computer. And I'm selling this, and I'm selling it to Naval Weapons Center in China Lake, California. Now, it's called China Lake, but the lake dried up like 70 million years ago kind of thing. It's just freaking flat desert. And I go up there, and I've done the pitch, I've done the selling. People are going to buy this. They're excited about doing it. But now it has to make it through all the procurement stuff, and it has to get put in there. Now, there's more scary story, but we'll say it for another time. So it finally gets approved, and I'm actually living there temporarily. Crazy thing. And Edna, and she looked like an Edna. She sounded like an Edna. She was a nice enough lady, but she was there and stuck in China Lake, California. And she was going to type up the purchase order, and it had been approved. And I was ecstatic because it was $287,000. And Edna said, now, you're thinking, put it into the computer system and it'll spit it out. They hadn't, this is the 80s, they hadn't converted to computerized purchase orders or contracts of that size for fear that somebody would come in and hack them and do something, because once that's issued and out there, it's a contract with the U.S. government. So Edna sits there and says, well, John, I've gotten to know you. You're a nice young man. I'll type it up. Now, my boss is screaming in my ear, same evil witch of a person. What are you doing? How come you don't have the order? And I said, okay. So I said to her, Edna, is it possible for me to be here? And she goes, well, you can sit in my cubicle. I have a little chair, but you can't say anything. Now, for any of you who know, I'm not called a Raging Verbalist because I'm a quiet person. And I sat there, and she explained to me that a contract of this size was 22 pages long. She fires up her IBM Selectric typewriter, and she spins the paper into it, and she starts typing. Chunk, chunk, chunk. Those are characters, by the way. We're not talking words per minute. We're talking characters per minute. And she starts typing it. And the greatest part about it is that this is now 9 a.m. And I'm thinking, man, we are going to, maybe it's going to be today. And it's chunk, chunk, chunk. 10:15, a buzzer goes off, and she goes, break. And she gets up, as does everybody. Now, she does finish the word she was typing on, but not the sentence. Gets up, I'm a smoker at this point in time. You couldn't smoke, by the way, inside of that facility, but everybody goes and steps outside because like 90% of the people are smokers. And we're standing out there, and Edna goes, I've had to clear the decks because this thing is approved, and this young man is waiting for that PO. We go back in precisely 15 minutes later, and she starts the torturous process again. You know, the telltale typewriter, boom, chunk, 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 chunk. Well, what happens is that like 11:55, the bell goes off because now it's an hour lunch, and she stops and she goes, John, we are making tremendous progress. Well, every time there's a break, my boss has said, if there's a break, you've got to call me and give me an update, which she is like the last frickin' person I want to call. But I call her, and I'm just sitting there praying that her machine is going to pick up, and she picks up on the first ring. Do you have the PO? Nope. Why don't you? Because Edna is typing it. What do you mean typing it? So I tried to explain it to her, and she, of course, goes batshit crazy over this thing. And I said, I'm here. I'm not leaving. I go back in, and we repeat the process and repeat the process, and we get to the end, and now we need the commander to sign off on it. And the commander, thank you, stayed a little bit longer because these people are, you know, they're working to precise schedules. And he sits there and he looks at it and he goes, well, Edna, I can sign off on it. I'll do it. And I sign off on it. And of course, she then goes and makes copies. Actually, she made 5 copies. He had to sign it 5 times. I get a copy. They file some stuff. And away I go. And I hauled ass across the desert. Again, I'm out in the desert. Hauled ass across the desert. I had to drive to Ontario, California airport, which I did not know much about, and find the FedEx location and see if I could get this thing in there. All, of course, this is long before we had cell phones, long before we had any way to communicate. And I go and I get it there, and it's crazy because, of course, the guy from FedEx goes, you know, you're lucky because the plane is delayed a little bit getting out to Memphis, so you just made it. I feel ecstatic. $287,000 order. It's in the can. It's there. My boss should be happy, right? If you're thinking she's going to be happy, you haven't seen a horror movie. You know, does the person with the mean disposition go, yay, oh yeah, hey, yeah, I'm sorry, that was such a bitch all the way through. So I find a payphone by the FedEx, which is outside, and I call her up, and she goes, okay, how come you haven't called me? Well, I just put it in FedEx, and it's on its way. And she goes, about time, and hangs up on me. By the way, this is why there's no love lost. Someday I will write a book, and I will name names, but she is totally a pain in the ass. So what happens is that we have the order, we ship the product, we do all those things. Pretty cool. I got the order, waiting for my commission check. Now, I haven't gotten my commission check yet, but in my mailbox in Orange County, California, comes this piece of official post of envelope. And what is it? It's a check from the U.S. government made out to me for the entire $287,000, because when Edna typed it up, I was the person who was going to get paid. And I looked at it and I said to my wife, it's not big enough for us to retire in Panama, but it's tempting. So I get on the phone, and again, I think, because this happens a lot in horror movies, you know, you always think it's going to work out better, right? You're in on a good roll. So I call her up and I say, by the way, I just got a check from the Navy for $287,000. She goes batshit crazy. I'm going to find out what's going on. So I said, well, I've already called corporate. You already called corporate? You know, what are you doing? You're always stepping over my head. And it's like, well, because you're an idiot. I didn't say it then, but, you know, I've said it often after that. And I'm going to send it up to them. And she goes, oh, my God. So she calls the lawyer, And the lawyer calls me, and he's talking to me like I'm a 7-year-old. And I said, listen, back up, Boogaloo. Let me tell you, I'm going to take this. I'm making a copy, so that way you have it. This is before fax machines even. And that way I've got it. And then I'm going to put it all there, and I'm going to put it in a FedEx envelope, and I'm going to ship it to you, and end of story. But all I can tell you is, I was tempted. If it was a 0 and it was bigger, maybe I would be doing this call from Panama or whatever. So yes, I have had some found money, and that was a crazy, crazy deal. And of course, eventually I do go back and see Edna again. I had sent her a thank you card, and everybody for the most part disliked her. I'm talking about from the my customers, my real customers, but she was always really nice to me all the time until she retired.
So it sounds like you got a treat on that one. So what advice do you give someone so they get a treat in their next sale?
Well, no matter how tough a customer is, no matter how difficult somebody can be, I'm not talking about, like working for a terrible boss. But what you want to do is you want to do things like send, especially today, it may shock them, is send them a handwritten thank you note. I don't know how many people I've said who they've gone and interviewed for a sales job and they didn't get it. And they go, well, I did send a thank you email. Wow. Can you put out any less effort? I guess you can. So always remember that you can do nice acts of kindness for people. And because of that, people will remember you. So if you want to get a treat and not the trick, there's a variety of things you can do. First off, you should show gratitude. Next is always remember that once the sale is done, all of the pain and agony of getting there is that you have to forget it. It is like someone explained to me when I was young, John, you want to have a memory of a Catholic mother, could apply to others, but I was raised as a Catholic mother who's just had her 4th baby. She looks drained and terrible. She's so happy that the baby is healthy. And she looks up at her husband and says, as soon as I'm back and fully healthy and everything, let's try for baby number 5, because all the pain and agony gets forgotten. So forget all of that, and move on and count that as a win. So always do that. And when you do that, you're going to be more successful. So I'm going to thank each and every one of you who spent some time. If you're new, thank you. Hit that like button. It always helps with the algorithm. If you're an ongoing viewer, hit that again, please. If you want to be a subscriber, we'd love to have you. Also go to our Facebook group, which is Position to Win Book group, and go check that out. Also go to positiontowinbook.com. There's lots of cool things. So Sandra, on this scary Halloween version of Raging Verbalist number 201, go out and have a great trick or treat and Halloween, and don't do anything crazy or dangerous. Have a safe one, but have a lot of fun. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you on the next Raging Verbalist.